I'm Michelle Nichols with Launch Team, and this is Amy Castronova with Novatech. We're kicking off today the annual medical device series. The top cited issue for medical devices this year is regulatory change.
It has been.
And we're just seeing a significant slowdown in decision making while companies await some fairly significant change from US elections and upheaval with the EU. A lot of ambivalence, perhaps no real change, but a slowing in decision making. From a regulatory front, a lot of the medical device companies are struggling with the differences state to state. For instance, text marketing can have a significant impact on patient compliance in states like Florida, but in New York, of course, it's not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's making marketing strategy and execution much more complicated.
Yeah, one of the questions that, or topics, I should say, that comes up a lot in discussions with our Novatech's clients, the medical device manufacturers, are what is this going to mean for companies selling their products in Britain, in the UK, and the rest of Europe. And so far there's been no change, so as far as, regulations and requirements today, companies who sell into the UK will still abide by the same rules for that. And that might change over time, but that will be, further into the future and not something to necessarily be, concerned with and making changes for today. That's what we're seeing on the regulatory front and what people are considering, talking about the most. The other topic that comes up most often, I don't know about on the marketing side, but certainly for Novatech is the updated ISO 13485 standards that were released in February of this year. And so that has led to a lot of change for companies. They have about 3 years to make the transition from the previous ISO requirement to the new one. And a lot of that change is really focused on risk management. That's the biggest theme. I think there are a couple themes, but the biggest theme there really being risk mitigation and risk management. So it's looking at manufacturers' supply chain as a whole. So the supplier controls, validation and verification, risk management across the supply chain has really been the shift in the focus that we're seeing in that regulation. And what we're advising our clients to do is to take a look at those procedures, to be able to monitor supplier controls and to handle corrective and preventative action very timely. So making sure that the team is trained and that those procedures are created and are up to date. Are you seeing anything?
Absolutely. The last few years brought so much consolidation in those markets. They're either moving to single source or they're doing dual source. Where they're moving one way or the other, but certainly looking to standardize their vendor list, their quality assurance. There's been a lot of move there, and it opens up a lot of opportunity for the manufacturers that supply those medical device companies.
Yeah. That is true. As a supplier ourselves, the past year and a half, it's been constant change, even just in the, like you said, the supplier portals and the if they're consolidating their lists and making consistent practices, we're seeing it on the purchasing side. So that's good for suppliers that are producing good, consistent work. That we're being upheld to those. Those new standards and the way that they're tracking and recording that, we're seeing this shift in the supplier controls.
Mm-hmm. And certainly to those manufacturers, it feels price driven, but it's about risk management.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing we're hearing a lot about is telemedicine and its implication all the way down the supply chain.
Oh, yeah.
From that perspective, it's putting a fairly significant product development onus on those medical device companies. From an R&D perspective, it changes the user environment so significantly, and it broadens the markets they can sell to. Their customer just grew exponentially. You'll see later in the series an interview with a company called Cupris out of the UK. that does a diagnostic tool, and they're using it by caregivers, parents, a much broader range of physicians than ever would have before. Used in the field, used in homes, and so there's so much more that they'll need to understand about their customer.
Yeah, I'm actually quite excited about the use of telemedicine. All this technology that's been available to us as consumers, for a long time. It seems like it's been a long time coming, in the medical space. So I'm excited that, companies and providers really are starting to use it. And I think for me it was about 2014 when I really started to hear providers talking more seriously about offering this as a solution to their patients. But even then it was really driven by the clinicians and the physicians themselves who said, I want to be able to speak to my patients. I have patients who are an hour to 2 hours away from my clinic. They're not going to come if they are unsure if it's a serious illness. And that's, at the end of the day, really costing our healthcare system a lot more money. The challenge back in 2014 was that, that wasn't reimbursed. And so some of the changes that have happened in the past 2 years is that now we have reimbursement for Medicaid anyway. And I can speak for New York State. What we see here is also in 2014, Governor Cuomo was able to reinvest about $6 billion in savings into this DSRIP program, which is also incentivizing practices and kind of collaborations of practices to come together and find ways to save money. I see that a lot of that focus is on telemedicine. How do we train our physicians to give remote visits? How do we train them on the technology? How do we train them to communicate? How do we train them, on the many of the things beyond their practice? So that's something that has been, I think, long overdue, but also has really been a focus that I've seen here in New York State. There's about 25 of these, collaborations of practices around the state. And I'm looking forward to seeing what those results, truly are.
There should be a fairly significant improvement in compliance, which leads to better patient outcomes. But I'm sure there'll be some blended approach. Yeah. We actually did a launch of a company moving from the clinic model to in-home, personalized telemedicine this past year because they were entering the U.S. market, and geographically that was just too big a challenge to approach with clinics. And so we'll share the lessons learned in this blog series on how to change your engagement model, how to engage, attract, and build a relationship with potential customers or patients. There is a real move throughout healthcare of considering the patient as a customer as these kind of options expand.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned. That's the summary of the trends that we are seeing at this point. And as Michelle indicated, stay tuned for our blog series where we will give these case studies and more in-depth tips for you.